I'm going to show you a couple other things about Zadii here. So the idea is, once you understand what Zadii looks like, and if we are to be conformed to his image, now you can start applying different pictures and models to what you read. So for example, you come into the chet, big white fence, with the four-colored door. Somebody was saying these drawings don't show up well on the camera. This is the big white fence representing the letter het, tet, and yod. Big white fence with the four-colored door. Right inside the big white fence is the altar of sacrifice. But het, tet, and yod, it's kind of like you come into the big white fence, and remember we say the nail holding the two sheepfolds together, the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, Ephraim and Yehuda. The nail holding the two together is Mashiach, Yeshua, the salvation that Yahweh provides. It's the picture in the het. But as soon as you come in, the tet is not only like a branding iron, but it's like a potter's wheel. It's the letter that goes around, that spins. It's like the wheel, the concept of the wheel. You come into the kingdom, and you're suddenly put on this wheel, around and around concept, around and around the Shabbats every week, around and around the festivals every year, around and around reading the Torah portions, going over and over. Remember, Lamed means to teach and learn and to rehearse and to go over it and over it and over it. Part of what this class is doing is going over it and over it and over it. And then you probably feel like, ah, gosh, I've heard some of these things before. Well, the point is to go over it and over it and over it. That's what Lamed means, and that's the picture in the tet. And so I'm trying to incorporate meanings of the letters into the, you might say, the teaching style. But the other thing about that tet is it's like a potter's wheel. So the potter's wheel is spinning. And of course, if you have a potter's wheel, you have a lump of clay that you put on the potter's wheel. And then the yod is the working hand, or the artist's hand. And so here's the yod working the lump of clay that's on the potter's wheel. What's the potter going to make? Remember, these are the letters when you first come in the gate. So when you come into the gate, the kingdom of Yahweh, you basically are saying, I am volunteering to yield to the work of his hands. So if you remember the letter Dalet, the week of the letter Dalet, I had a big red yield sign. It was, and even on the highways, and I noticed, just like once you start learning, this Paleo Hebrew and make associations, you'll see that even the highway signs here in America is a big red triangle with the word yield on the middle of it. And the idea of a Dalet is a choice, fork in the road. And the idea here is that you have to choose to yield to come into the kingdom, and as you yield, you have to volunteer to be workable clay. What instructions is the yod going to use to mold the clay? Well, the next two letters happen to be Kaf and Lamed, both of which line up with the altar of sacrifice, which equals the Torah, which is the He of Yod He, Vav He, right? Yod is the hand of the Creator, the He is the expression of the Creator, which is the Torah, which is His breath, which is His words. But the He then being the Torah also lines up with Kaf and Lamed. Remember that what I was talking about earlier is like patterns of wheels within wheels. And so it may sound confusing, but I'm trying to throw all these different things out here so that you'll get used to seeing what looks confusing is kind of like the model of what Ezekiel talked about, the wheels within the wheels. Well, these are the instructions. So if these are the instructions of the Torah, you could say, well, those are the instructions of how this working hand is going to form the clay. And what's the clay going to look like? The Zadii. You see, the Zadii, to finish this model out, you've got the laver here, and then you've got the set-apart place, and you've got the menorah, table of showbread, altar of incense, and then in the Kadosh Kadashim, in the set-apart of the set-apart, It's kind of like the bullseye. It's kind of like that's the point. And remember, that's the sprout of the Zadii. Well, Yeshua is the archetype, the epitome, the icon, the quintessential, which really literally means like the fifth dimension. The quint is 5. The quintessential Israel man, and like the shirt says, Gabor La Yahweh. That's Yeshua, the mighty, valiant hero of Yah. And then there's scriptures where it says he came and his white raiment is red with the juice of grapes or the blood of the wine. It says, I have trampled the vineyard alone. Nobody else would do it with me. And he's the responsible party. So as the Tet, he's the authorized signatory. As the Tzadi, he is the one iconic archetype who is the Tzaddik, the righteous one, singular individual that all these letters are about, and that all the letters are the expression of who he is, the description of who he is. And so everything that's being done here points to the Zadii one. And we are to be conformed to his image. So we who choose to come to the kingdom of Yod-He Vav-He volitionally yield, like the Dalit, we yield to enter the door and present ourselves as a living sacrifice on the altar of his Torah to be workable clay in his hand as he forms us, conforms us to the image of Yeshua, the Zadii. So the Zadii is the picture of what all of us will become. So in the Aleph-Bet song that we sang, and let's try to remember to sing it at the end, Zadii stands alone, though all Israel shall become. See, it's almost like this cryptic riddle, maybe if you first heard that and you don't know the meanings of the letters. So as we go through each week, hopefully you're able to take these letters and go, oh, that's what it meant. Zadii stands alone. Why? It's in the Kadosh Kodashim. It's all by itself. The only thing in the Kadosh Kodashim is the Ark of the Covenant. And in the Ark of the Covenant is Aaron's rod that budded, looks like the Zadii, the manna, the table of stone that Yahweh wrote with his finger of the 10 Commandments. So you get this picture that it's all about the Zadii, because the letter Kuf means after this. After what? You just came to the main thing. If you go to a restaurant, you might have an appetizer to get your appetite stirred. You might have a beverage. Then you have the main course. And then after this, you have dessert. But what's it all about? It's all about the main course. The Zadii is the main course. The Zadii is what it is. The Zadii is what we are conformed to. The Zadii is what he is and the image of him. And you could say, yeah, but how do you know what the image of him is? Because the 10 Commandments were written by the finger of Yahweh. And remember, the word literally finger, the dictionary will tell you, means color, paint, dye. So one reason for having all these colors is not to look like a jester. Of course, in King Lear, the jester was the wise man, and it was the king actually who became the fool. But that's another story. The point is, the color of Yahweh is his letters that he wrote with his finger on the tables of stone that were put in the Ark of the Covenant in the Kadosh Kodashim. And so to have these colors of saying, these are not just looking silly, these are saying, thank you, Yahweh, for the brilliant, incredible excellency, your majesty, your glory, your splendor of what you gave to Israel, your dear, most precious beloved. You gave Israel your words. Your words. Not an image, not an animal, not a man that we should bow to. Your words. And we discussed this before. It's in Deuteronomy. His words are out of his own mouth. He determined to be his most precious self that he would reveal to man, and put within man the capacity to receive, to apprehend, to comprehend, to manage, to nurture, to ponder, to meditate, to work, and to choose volitionally, proactively, to then express in his own behavior, in his own words, and his own actions those very words. And as he does that, Yahweh determined in the great scheme of how he invented the universe that as a man would do that, from within the man would burst forth a geyser of life. Even Yeshua said, and here's another Zadii picture, anyone thirsty? Come to me. I will give you living water. That if a man drinks just a drop, it will become out of his innermost being a gushing geyser of living water to feed how many others if you're thirsty for a drop? That's a Zadii picture. It's the sprout. It's the explosion. You see that? So you can take these various New Testament scriptures, the stories that we've had, and you plug them back into these other letters, and you'll see the way they all connect. And you realize that the entire story is in the alphabet. And so there's kind of a puzzle game you can do of like reading the different things in the gospel stories, or different things in the epistles, or different things in the book of Revelation, or wherever, and say, how do these line up with the different letters? The point is, when you come in and he puts you, the lump of clay, on the potter's wheel, he's forming you into the image of the Zadii, which is Yeshua doing the Ten Commandments, the constitution of the kingdom, in perfect example. And he said, follow me. I only do the things I see my Father doing. I only say the things I hear my Father saying. Follow me. When he's known as Rev Shaul, or the Apostle Paul, when he got that picture, he repented, he teshuvah of his ways of murdering and killing and imprisoning the followers of the way, the Talmudim of Haderek. Derek means way, Talmudim is the taught ones, the disciples of the way. And he became a leader of those teaching the ways of the way. And he said, follow me as I follow Mashiach, as he embodies and portrays the ways of his Father, Yahweh. So let me show you a couple other things about the Zadii. According to the pattern of the Mishkan, say we have the Ark of the Covenant down here. And here's the kind of a simple little glyphic symbol of the Malachim, the angels with their wings touching. That's a simple little version that I sometimes draw. If you'll notice, the one on here is a little different. The reason why this symbol is a little different here is because this one, for what it's worth, a better way to draw the kaf is like that. It looks like an open hand. But just for the sake of kind of expedience, a lot of times I'll draw it like that. You know, some people draw it like that. It became the letter K like that. It's all the kaf. The Ark of the Covenant, I started just as a quick little icon glyph that you can work pretty quickly, but Ron Wyatt supposedly found the Ark of the Covenant back, I think it was the 80s, in Jerusalem, under the mountain where Yeshua's cross would have been put. I don't know how many people know this story, but when there was an earthquake, the blood would have dripped down the cross into the ground opened up, the Ark of the Covenant was down there 20, 30 feet deep, and he found what he says to be blood on the mercy seat on top of the Ark of the Covenant. Now, there's speculation through the ages whether Ron Wyatt's a liar or a maniac, making stuff up, or whether that was where Yeshua was crucified, or maybe it was at the Church of the Sepulchre, which is in Jerusalem quite a ways away, or just where it was. The point is, Ron Wyatt claims to have seen the Ark of the Covenant, and it looked like this. If and when there comes a day that the Ark is ever put on public display, it'll be interesting to note if that's the way it ends up looking. But quite often you'll see, you've seen many different renditions, probably the Ark of the Covenant with the angels kneeling on it and their wings. It almost doesn't matter, so I draw it like that, just it's a box with a couple wings. Now, the interesting thing, inside of it is the table of stone with the finger of Yahweh writing the words of the Ten Commandments, right? Above it, you've got this pillar of fire, you know, kind of like this swirling vortex. And that was at night, and then during the day, there was the pillar of smoke. So the pillar of smoke kind of billows out, and billowing, but it comes from above this. Above that, kind of looks like a question mark. And the pillar of fire kind of looks like an exclamation point. So I've made the notation before to you that the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke, is kind of like this question mark and exclamation point. And on the chart here, you'll see a question mark, an exclamation point above the little image, if you look really close, above the image of the Ark of the Covenant with some clouds around it. There's a reason for that. I believe in a sense, see, you could say, look, I'm just making up all these things. And it's like, yeah, but they're there to play with. It's like kids playing with blocks, right? Again, we quoted once before, Malachi 3:16. Then they talk to one another, and they discuss the matters of Yahweh's word, and he, because they, the people of Israel, who happen to be thinking and remembering him, he said, because they're remembering my book, remember I said everything is like this lever? Whatever you do comes back. It's like the yoke of the vav. It's like this teeter-totter. The way we regard his words, he will regard us. If Israel regards the commandments, Yahweh will regard Israel, and if not, then not. Everything is reciprocal with Yahweh. It's a legal document of reciprocation. So he says, you guys are remembering my word in my book? I'm going to write a book remembering you. You regard my name. I'm going to write in my book your name. Now, you could have the book of life, the book of Revelation talks about, and the book of deeds, but here's a book of remembrance. And I, by being in this class with you, fully expect that the day we stand in front of him and he opens the book of remembrance, every one of our names is going to be called out from that book. And I put before you the Zadii, the hope and the expectation to be there on that day and to hear your name called, because that's his word. That's a great thing to look forward to. But I'll tell you, when I first heard about this book of remembrance, it's like, what? Did I ever hear about that? And I've tried to find out how many people know about this book, and I ask random strangers, some of them Christians, maybe not. It's like, hey, did you ever hear about the book of remembrance that your name might be written in? And most people haven't. Why is that? You see, when you find out about one of Yahweh's treasures, you can do two things. You can say, well, maybe you could do 3 or 4 things. But the point is, you could say, so what? Or you might sit there and go, I wonder if I'll end up with that treasure. Or you could say, I'm going for it. I'm going to get that treasure. What do I have to do? I have to think and talk about his name. I'm going to do that. That's what this class is. This class is making the provision for all of you and anybody watching out there through these tapes so that we can all grab hold of that treasure and whatever comes with it of having our names written in the book of remembrance. And I don't think it's simply to have your name written in the book. I think there's probably something else to it, that having your name written in the book is what entitles you to whatever that stuff is. But hey, that's in the other dimension. But we're banking on that other dimension. So the fact that there's this question mark and exclamation point, question mark and exclamation point, over, it's like the bullet point is the bullseye. The target, the bullseye of the bullseye is what? The 10 Commandments. That's what he put in the bullseye underneath the question mark. Any questions? Right here. Are you sure? Yes! Exclamation point right here. Any more questions? It's right here. Are you sure? Yes, absolutely, it's right here. The question mark and exclamation point. You can go around and around. So it's like, did Yahweh do that on purpose? Okay, am I making this up? I'm going to show you one other thing. You won't see this in Hebrew. You won't see this in English, but you'll see it in Hebrew. There's a certain verse which says that talking to this people, their hard of hearing, and the way that he'll reveal it is line upon line, precept upon precept. You familiar with that? Do you know what the word line is in Hebrew? Do you know how it's spelled? Some people out here are either artists or carpenters or contractors or seamstresses maybe. How do you draw a circle? You take a dot, you put a pin in it maybe, you take a string, you hold it tight, and then you run that string around in a circle, right? Hey, there's that Tet image again. That's how you determine a circle. The word for line that's used there is the letter Kuf and then the letter Vav. Well, remember, the Vav at the end of the word basically means his. His Kuf is the word that's literally translated line. I don't understand what's going on with this microphone making these weird noises. Let me just hold this. It's not working otherwise. Anyway, the point is, you notice in a Kuf, which we'll get into next week's the letter Kuf, is that there's a line and there's a round part. It's like the 1 and the 0. It's the singular and the plural. We'll get into all those concepts next week. It's the back of the head, so it's like the neck and the round part of the back of the head, and it literally means after this. It's also like a monkey's arm. So here you have the monkey, and there's this long reach. We'll get into that next week. But those are Kuf ideas, and they come after the Zadii. But the idea here is that you hold a point, and that you spin the string around, and it forms a zone. So the word for zone is that same concept. But that's the word line. But it's literally his Kuf. But the Kuf we just talked about looks like the pillar of fire and pillar of smoke, which is over the Ark of the Covenant, or comes up out of the Ark. It was actually over the whole camp, over the whole Mishkan. But you could say, if you appropriate pictures to these letters and you see the Kuf and you go, his line is literally his Kuf, which is his pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. But what's a line? A line's also a plumb bob, right? If you want to get something perfectly straight, you take something that's weighted, a plumb bob typically has a point on it, so it's pointing to, and you hold it from up there and you drop it down. Well, the interesting thing is the first word of the 10 Commandments is Anoki, or Anki. Like being in music, when you're on key, it's like, oh, I'm right there. The wavelengths line up just right. Again, is it a coincidence that all these words play? That's also on the chart over here about being on key in parentheses. Aleph, Nun, Kaf, Yod is Anoki. But anyway, the point is, his plumb line is spelled Aleph, Nun, Kuf, Aleph, Nun, Kaf, which basically is like, here's my straight line, like an exclamation point, like a plumb bob, and the dot that line is pointing to is perfectly plumb from whoever's holding it up, wherever, to that spot. If you move it off a little bit, it's not going to be a straight line. Now, I was talking to one fellow who's a preacher, and in his sermon, he said, I think it was either a sermon or his conversation with me, nevertheless, he said, it's not that you have to be perfectly straight. It's just somewhere close. It's like, wait a minute. By whose determination is close good enough? If Yahweh holds the plumb line, and Yahweh says, Anki, Anoki, this is my line, and that's perfectly straight. Yeshar El, otherwise known as Israel, perfectly straight. And the word Asher, remember, Eya, Asher, Eya, I am that I am, I will be what I will be. And that word Asher literally means straight, strengthen, confirmation, authentication. How do you know it's right? You can validate it and authenticate it because Eya equals Eya. Yehi equals Yehi. What Aleph equals tav. What he said is what he'll do. There's this evenness. And if somebody else, and that's the straight line. And if what he said, the Ten Commandments, is what he meant by the Ten Commandments. The question is, what did he really say? But then we say, yeah, but it's not perfectly straight. It's somewhere close. It's like, well, who are you to determine what's close? Is it 1 degree off, 10 degrees off? How about 90 degrees off? That's horizontal. Is that close enough? What's close? If it's not straight, who's to say what's acceptable? But when you get that plumb bob hanging down to the dot, the bullet point, the glint, now I'm trying to show you images, pictures, because he talks about Israel being the apple of his eye, the twinkle in the eye, the pupil of the eye. And there's another verse, I forget where it is, but I found where it says, his eye is on a certain place. And here's a picture. You know, we have this thing that's, whether it's a doctrine or just an ism, we say, oh, well, God watches everybody. His eye is even on the sparrow, and he watches everything. So we could do whatever, and he's always watching us, and you should feel good about that. But I found this verse that says, I'm paraphrasing it, but it says, his eye is on this one zone. His eye is on this one area. And if you want his particular attention and favor, you don't stand over here and ask him to come over here and bless you. You go into that zone and say, hey, this is where you're looking. You ever talk to somebody and they're sometimes staring off in the distance? You know, I do that sometimes because I'm thinking. And some people, noticing that, will actually walk around and stand where you're looking so that you'll see them. It's like, oh, thank you. I didn't mean to be rude, but that's cool to do. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying, you know, sometimes you want to get somebody's attention, and if they're kind of like drifting off, go where they're looking. Where is Yahweh looking? This is the zone that he's looking. And the word line, you know, we might think, oh, line. That I hold my hand up sideways like the letter Kaf because it's like lines written on the Torah scroll. And we could say that's the line, but see, this is a vertical line. And the word that's translated line upon line is literally spelled kuf vav. But the other interesting thing, that precept upon precept is spelled, guess what? Zadii vav. And what is it that's at the bullet point underneath the pillar of fire, pillar and smoke? It's the Ark of the Covenant, and inside the Ark of the Covenant is the table of 10 stones with things written on them, all of which are the ways of righteousness, which is the Zadii. So when he says precept upon precept, these aren't just imaginable ideas. These are the specifics of what he said. Kuf, his kuf, Zadii, his Zadii. And what he's saying is, the Zadii is the bullet point under the kuf. And the kuf is the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. Moses said, show me your glory. And he said, no one can see my face and live, but I'll show you my backside. The kuf means the back of the head. I'll show you my kuf view. What was in the kuf view? The Torah. What did he put over Moshe as he passed by? He put his kaf, his open hand. Well, if the kaf, the open hand, I say lines up with the Torah according to the pattern, he put his Torah on Moshe and passed by to prepare Moshe to be able to behold his glory. So he took it off and he said, now you can see what the kuf views that went past you. It's like, again, I'm trying to plug letters into the pictures so that you can fill up, inflate the stories according to the alphabetic letters that he's given us, to enhance them by the words of his mouth and by the pictures within those words. You see that? The other interesting thing about a Zadii is that, and we covered this with the week of the ayin, is that if you have ayin Zadii, it's the word that spells wood or tree or handle, a wooden handle, like the wooden handle on this iron scepter. It says that the Sefer of the Torah is a tree of life to those who take hold of it. But this word ayin Zadii also means advice. Actually, if you spell it with a hey, which is that which comes out from, or that which is revealed by this, it means literally either closed eyes or advice. So again, remember I said the letter, hey, we got two voices of everything. You've got the shout and you've got the whisper. You've got either take my advice or you can close your eyes. But if you close your eyes to hearing his words, the Zadii won't sprout. And Kuf, after this, when he comes back, you might get the pokey end of the tool instead of the welcoming open hand. Welcome, please enter the joys of your Father who has expected your coming back to him to enjoy what's been prepared for you since the beginning, the foundations of the world, with eternal extent. Because you see, once Yeshua came back to life after the 3 days and 3 nights, once he Zadi'd, what did he do? Well, after a few days of hanging around talking to people, he Kufed. Because the letter Kuf is, remember, to come from this realm up to the eternal dimension. And when he's coming back, Kufing, he's taking his hosts and coming back down here. There are pictures inside the Kuf. But the Zadii is the resurrection. The Kuf would be both the ascension and the coming back, the return. But the Zadii is the resurrection. So if you take the picture of Yeshua being the Mashiach and him personally embodying a resurrection, hanging around for a while, and then going up into the eternal realm, there's a picture of a model of the restoration of Israel coming back to life and hanging around for a while, and it's like the image of this Zadii. Here's, you might say, the certain number of 1,000 years of the course of time. Here's maybe the sprout of giving the Torah to Israel, and Israel said, no thanks, we want to be stupid for a while. They lost the blessing, and after a while, when maybe us, this generation, we come back to the ways of the Torah, and it sprouts life, and now we reign with the authority that Yeshua, the one who was pierced, gave us, that he embodied. He walked through walls when he came back. He did things that were inhuman when he came back. He also did things that were inhuman before. But again, did he do things that were impossible for Israel? Or did he do things... At the meeting the other day, I said, imagine Yeshua. Did he come up and say, hey guys, let me show you some tricks. Hey, I can walk on water. Look at me. Hey, I can raise the dead. Look at me. Hey, I can turn a few loaves into a meal. Hey, look at me. He didn't do that. He was basically showing his Talmudim, his taught ones, what they were supposed to be doing. You see, everything Yeshua did was actually doing what we should have been doing the whole time. Calling forth healing, casting out demons, multiplying food. What would this world have looked like if Israel had kept the blessing? What would we be doing? But instead, there's been 2,000-3,000 years worth of damage. Is the damage irreparable? Was the hunger irreparable? Was death irreparable? Was blindness or deafness irreparable? No, Yeshua said, just speak the word. Pay, open your mouth, speak the Zadii, and what happens next? Zadii, the dead stick lives. Your blind eyes are opened. Take his advice. There's another interesting thing about a Zadii, and this might be controversial to some. In Psalms 110, it says, well, you probably don't know what it says, but you might be familiar with what it says in Hebrews, referring to Psalms 110. It says, I have made you a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Anybody know about that? I don't want to get into too much because we'll get off track and we're running out of time. But if you read about the Levitical blessing to the Levites, he gave them an eternal priesthood, what Leolam anyway, to a pretty far extent. We don't know exactly what he means by that. But with this business of Melchizedek, it says, at least the Christians have said, hey, we got a different priesthood. Forget them crazy Jews and their Levites. They've been done away with. We got the order of Melchizedek. So they make their fancy clothes of their in their fancy covenants and their fancy calls of, we got a better priesthood. And in the book of Hebrews, it's invoking Psalms 110, because that's the only place where this phrase, the order of Melchizedek, is ever mentioned. The only I've ever seen it mentioned is when Zadii, the king of the scepter of the Zadii, was speaking to Abraham after the conquest of the kings who wrecked Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, took Lot. This was before Yahweh wrecked Sodom and Gomorrah, but they pillaged the whole valley of King of Sodom. Anyway, this is what it says in Psalms 110, verse 4. Nun, Shin, Bet, Ayin, Yahweh, Velo, Yod, Nun, Chet, Mem. Now, where we are in the course so far, we're at the letter Zadii, which is pretty far down the line, so I expect you to recognize and understand what most of these letters mean. I know I'm scrawling it, and you probably can't read it on camera, and you guys probably can't even see it here, but I'll explain it in a minute. Then it's Aleph, Tav, He, Kaf, He, Nun, Lamed, Ayin, Vav, Lamed, Mem, Ayin, Lamed. Does anybody know what this word is? Dalet, Bet, Resh, Tav, Yod, Dabir, T. Does anybody know what that word means? Have we gone over this word enough that you know what it means? What's that? Something to do with words. Then there's this word, Mem, Lamed, Kaf, Yod, and here's the word of the week, Zadii, Dalet, Kuf. You see, even the word Tzadi is spelled with both a Zadii and a Kuf. Nun, Shin Bet Ayin. Well, the word Shin Bet Ayin is Shavah, which is actually the word 7, and it also means an oath, or to swear an oath. And remember, Nun was to impart, like a lightning bolt. So what it means is to activate a sworn oath. Yod He Vav He. And in English, we say Yod He Vav He will swear an oath, but in Hebrew, basically, the one who's doing the action comes after it. So you could say, imparted or activated a sworn oath of 7, like the Sabbath day, the 7th day is a sworn oath, to keep the 7 festivals is a sworn oath, the 7-year Shabbat, sabbatical year is a sworn oath, the 7 sevens and the 4 is the sets up the Jubilee, which is the 50th, like Shavuot, the same, 49 days, 7 sevens. So 7 has to do with oaths and swearing. Anyway, Velo, that means that's the word for no. Yod, Nun, Chet, Mem. Well, Nun, Het is where you get the word Noach, which means comfort or rest, which means, remember the Yod as a prefix is he will, and Mem has to do with, well, Het, Mem is heat. And so this is to relax, so it means he will relax the heat. It's translated relent. So Yahweh has sworn, and he's not going to turn the oven off of boiling this oath, you might say. He's not going to cut back on making it happen. Aleph Tav, remember, is a plow. It means with, it means you. It's the plan from the beginning to the end revealed, but it's translated with you. Kaf He Nun is the word Kohen, which is priest. But Kaf Nun, Kan, is where we get the word can, like, yes, I can. And it means, yes, truly, so, thus. Look in the red dictionary. The Kohen is the priest, and he is supposed to teach people. Kaf, open hand, right, the gift, like. Nun is one who does, engaged in the action, and it's just like Yahweh made it happen, like this Nun related to that Nun. So the Kohen's job is to give the people the expression of just like Yahweh did and said, and make it to them explainable. That's the Kohen's job. Swear an oath, Yahweh, and not turn it off. You, Kohen, Leolam. Hey, we know that word. Leolam Chazdo. It's forever your chesed. Well, this is Leolam al Ayin Lamed, we covered this a couple weeks ago. Ayin Lamed is a yoke. It's joining something, and it's literally translated in the dictionary as together with, beside, above, next to, concerning, on account of, thus, therefore, though, or although. It's a yoking word, like the letter Vav. It's a connection. It's something joined with. Joined with deberti. Now, if you look at the word debar, it's a cattle driver. It's the pasture in front of you. It's a barge tugged behind a boat, like a trailer, baggage, something, luggage, something you're going to need when you get where you're going. It's also a word, a matter, a thing. It's also the words or the utterances that have something following them, such as, keep these commandments or you'll get either the blessing or the curse. What are you towing behind you, blessing and cursing, regarding these matters? The Debarim, the Debarim, the book Deuteronomy is Debarim. Those are the matters that were written on the tables of stone, put in the Ark of the Covenant, which is the Zadii stuff which is going to cause the sprout of either the blessing or the curse. It's what follows after this time of dormancy. So after you mem what gets nooned, after the certain time, according to the seasons, after the 2730-year curse, 2730-year curse, what's going to sprout? Either the blessing and the curse. Moshe said, I know you guys. Yahweh said, I know you. You're stiff-necked and hard-headed and resistant to my words, and you guys are going to do badly, and you're going to do unjustly, and you're going to get the curse, but later on you're going to get the blessing. He says that. I can show you the verses if we have time to go there. But the debar are the matters that he told us for sure that we can count on regarding the matters of the blessing and the curse based on how we regard his words. This word mem lamed kaf yod is melki. Now if you look at mem lamed kaf, you'll see in the dictionary that it means king. But it also means one who takes counsel. You see, the President of the United States doesn't run by himself. He also has a cabinet. Nowadays he's got a gang of 12 that he also confers with, but he's also got the Senate and the Congress. He's one who takes counsel. He's not one who does it on his own. The word king, if we just say, well, that's king, we've missed what's in there, because the mem is what comes from lamed kaf. It means to you, but it also means go. And remember, the lamed is the authority, and kaf is the open hand. It's the Torah instructions. We could go on and on. We've done that before. And then the letter yod means my. So you could read the word melchi as one who takes my counsel. Kind of like ayin Zadii, hey, my advice. And then you've got Zadik. Well, the word Zadik, as we said, was righteousness, justice, right ruling, the sprouting of doing what Yahweh said just like he said, so it would bring forth the promises just like he said. And like the kuf is also like, picture the mouth of a jar that you pour the liquid out of, and you'll see a round mouth, and the liquid pouring out is also a kuf picture. So Zadii, Zadik, is a picture of the sprouting of righteousness and what pours out from it. What pours out from righteousness, Yahweh says, is the dead stick will live. The dry desert will turn into a garden. The wicked will be thrown into the fire as dry thorns. All these pictures are in the Dabir. And then remember, the tav at the end or at the beginning is past tense or future tense. So you could read deberti as my words that I did speak, that I have spoken, that will come about, according to the one who takes the counsel of my righteousness. So this is Psalms 110, verse 4. So here, let's go through it again. Imparting the sworn oath, activating, implementing, establishing as a judicial imperative, a legal document in the heavenly realm according to the courts of Yahweh, and he will not turn it away. You are yoked with being a Cohen of explaining these matters forever, or regarding the eternal matters, or this is unto the world, because olam can also mean world, or the whole world, unto or regarding my matters of the counsel of that which will cause the resurrection to the door of the ascension, or the resprouting of the opening unto the rising up. It looks like Ezekiel 37, the dry bones of Israel coming back to life. Now, who's he talking about? Well, now you have to go back to the previous verses. Do you see the order of Melchizedek anywhere? The order of Melchizedek, which was used as an excuse to say we have a new priesthood, which doesn't have to regard the old matters of the devotee Melchizedek. Interesting that the phrase in Hebrew has shanghaied, not to speak ill against the Chinese, but it's a word for taking somebody and running off with them against their will and imprisoning them to work in the galley ships and become a prisoner and a slave in another land. The words in Hebrews have been used to distort the words in Psalms 110 and make us think that the things that are unto forever to be his council of Zadii, which are the devotee, have been done away with, and we have a new priesthood which gets to obliterate and disregard the whole thing, and they are authorized as if there's another pillar of fire and pillar of smoke over that authorization. Meanwhile, the pillar of fire and pillar of smoke, which was over the Ark of the Covenant, what happened to that? Did this verse really do away with it? But they used the verse, and guess what? Because nobody knows how to read Hebrew, they think that the book of Hebrews is accurately quoting Psalms 110. Doesn't look like it to me. See what you can do with these letters? Aren't they fun? Anyway, another interesting thing, Yeshua. Was he worthy? What was the qualification standard of his worthiness? Sinless? What was the standard of sinlessness? You have to have a plumb line standard. You have to have like what they call a whiskey stick, a level. They used to put whiskey in it because whiskey didn't freeze when it got cold, and then you'd have a bubble. It's what we call a plumb level, right? You have to have something that tells you where the line is, and then you measure up to the line. What's Yahweh's line? Kufav. Where's the Kufav? Over the Zadii Vav. What's the Zadii Vav? The Ten Commandments. If Yeshua is going to line up and be considered worthy, sinless, it means he did exactly what was in that Ark of the Covenant. That's the measure. That's the standard. There is no other one. So if he did those things and he said, follow me, what should we be doing? Following him. And if we're going to be conformed to his image, what will we look like? We'll look like him. Doing what? Doing the stuff in there. I'm qualifying this because what I'm saying is that I've heard it said, and I've quoted this before, I've heard preachers say on the radio and in the pulpit, that stuff in that Ark of the Covenant is no concern of ours. We got a different covenant doing different stuff, and that stuff's been done away with. Really? Yahweh's pupil of his eye that he said he'll protect like crazy? Yahweh said, I'm focused right here, and if anybody wants my attention, they better step into my line of sight and they'll get my focus of attention. Don't be standing over there and yelling at me. I'm looking right here. And where's right here? The bullseye of the Zadii under the Kuf. That's the message in these letters. According to the pattern, the Zadii lines up with Shemini Atzeret of the festivals. The interesting thing is Shemini means 8. Atzeret is a gathering. But it's the 7th festival. But 7 is completion of a sort. 8, as Jamie said, is a new beginning. See this mystery? You've got an Aleph Tav. You've got a beginning and an end when it's flipped around. The interesting thing, the Kadosh Kodashim was also called Hadabir. It's called the Word. It's the set apart of the set apart, but it's also called the Dabir. If you look at the pattern of the Lord's Prayer, what's in the position of this letter is, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. When you see this letter and it lines up with the Lord's Prayer, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. So be it. That's the word Amen. Aleph, Mem, Nun. When it lines up with the Beatitude in Matthew 6, it lines up with the phrase, blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of Elohim. This isn't a weapon of war. This is a weapon of righteousness and peace. It lines up with Shabbat. To keep Shabbat is to do the Zadii regarding Yahweh's words. To regard Shemini Atzeret is to keep the Zadii regarding Yahweh's festivals. In Daniel 12, if you line it up, down here on the bottom, it lines up in the Zadii position. From the time the daily offering is removed, it's regarding the mute abomination, otherwise known as the abomination of desolation. It's a bit of a puzzle. There's all kinds of puzzles and mysteries in that chart, and maybe we'll get to them once this class is over, and we'll explain it one more week or something. What's the puzzle? Why in that position does the reference to the abomination of desolation fall in the Zadii position? Think about it. The words he spoke are pure truth and righteousness. To twist his words is an abomination. His words of truth, rightly spoken, will bring forth life, even from a dead stick and from dry bones. To twist his words and say they're not there brings desolation. What is the abomination of desolation? Twisting his scepter of righteousness into something that we say doesn't exist and doesn't matter. So we can't do it, can't keep it, and it abominates and desolates. So one I've heard it said was, gee, to put Yasser Arafat's bones on the mount, on the top of the Temple Mount was the abomination of desolation. It's like, well, whatever, maybe. The point is, all I have to do is look at the Zadii and look at the Ten Commandments written in the tables of stone in the Ark of the Covenant under the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke, and say, if we think that any of those words have been altered, done away with, or are no longer the straight reckoning with truth and kindness, why, that kind of talk is an abomination of desolation. We're running out of time here, but there's many other things we could say. I would say one other thing, just to show you what Greek might do. Can't prove this, but just an interesting thing. I saw the word written the other day, Zeus. Z-E-U-S. Now, the interesting thing about Greek is that we have 1 minute left. The first person masculine always ends in U-S. So when you have Jesus, J-E-S-U-S, some people think it means, hey, Zeus, as if it's referencing Zeus. But the U-S ending is first person masculine. So where they come up with the J, there was no letter J, but it's the replacement for the I and the J in the English, which is where we get the letter Yod. So you could say, well, I can kind of see it in there, but what's Zeus? Well, that's a Z sound, which is actually a Zion, and a Zion and a Hey is kind of where the E is, so Zion Hey means this. So you could say, well, it means this man. Zeus means this man. But quite often, the letter Z is mistaken for the Zadii. So Zadii Hey, his righteousness, his scepter, the scepter revealed to a man. And who is Zeus? I'm not going to go into the Shem of Zeus because the scriptures say don't even let their names be in your mouth. But I'm trying to make a point here. I'm not trying to exalt Zeus. But one time not so long ago, I was thinking of something else. Has anybody ever heard of by Jove? Ever heard that expression? Jove. J-O-V-E. What letter became the J? The Yod. What letter is an O? It's a phonetic of O or Ah. It could be a Vav, but it's an Ah. It could be a Hey. And the V is actually, could be a Vav. and then here's an E at the end. It could be, did Yod He Vav He get spun into Jove, which also then got spun into Zeus? The point is, if the truth of the Hebrew was from the very beginning, everything that got twisted came out of this. So it's not a matter of saying, oh, when you say by Jove, you're using what came out of Yahweh's name. Or if you're talking about Hail Zeus, oh, I'm really referencing Yahweh, so that's cool. It's like, it's not just the phonetics, it's the character, it's the Shem, it's the fame and renown and reputation. Does Jove or Zeus claim to be the makers of the earth and rested on the seventh day? No. So they're not Yahweh. You can paint any name, any picture. You can call any mighty one Yahweh or Jesus or Holy Spirit, or call him Zeus or Jove or anybody else. It's the Shem. It's the reputation. It's the claim to be the creator who created on 6 days and rested on the seventh, who gave us the 7 festivals of commanded gatherings, like calling the army to be at a certain point at a certain time. That's what the word moedim means. And it's the one who said, I have the authority to command every blessing, and I will make the dead stick live, and I will take a tree and shrivel it up. I will take the armies of the hosts of the enemies of Israel, and I will knock them down like dominoes, like they never were. And I will raise Israel up from the dead and give it excellence and majesty when Israel chooses to come back to my word. That is Yod He Vav He. And if any other culture and any other people twists his words and extracts his words, it's an abomination of desolation, no matter how they spell it. Fortunately, we have the method of confirmation, authentication, the straight path, Eye, Asher, Eye, Yehi, or, Va, Yahi, or. It has to match. And when Israel matches its hope, its attitude, its disposition, and the way it treats its neighbors and enemies according to the scepter of righteousness, then Israel will see Yahshua, which is Yahweh's salvation to Israel. It's dependent on Israel's heart and action.
You want to lead us in the Aleph Bet song?
In the Aleph Bet song. You want to sing the song? Okay.
Everybody stand. Let's go ahead and stand up.
Here we go. Aleph is the planet of a purpose in his heart. Bet is the container of all he would impart. Gimel is the sent one to retrieve us home again. To enter through the door, the Dalet. Hey, look, he's the Vav, man! Cut off, perfect yet, the Zayin, one of 7-ness. Selah. Het is for our safekeeping, sealed by Tet like a wedding ring. Yod, his hand, who formed my hand, to hold on to his cloth, which is Porah, Porah, Porah. Our regard reveals the heart. Lameding, so that from Mem a blessed noon restart. Samech, Ayin, Pei, Shema, Shomer, together one. Zadii stands alone, though all Israel shall become. After Kuf, our noble Resh, exalted in the sky. Sheen, our shining Elion, Yahweh El Shaddai. The Aleph, Tav, accomplished and completed as he said. The one word left untranslated, the one we all reject. Still the offer yet remains, Chaim Ed Ha'olam. For the blessed Brit of Aleph, of love and death is Aleph, bet his song, ha, shir, shirim. Sorry, I haven't sung it lately, I forgot the words, gosh. Anyway, sprouting back to life is, this word comes from the Psalms, Yahweh commands the blessing, live forever, chayim, ed, olam, ed, ayin dalet, that's the word in the Shema, the witness, the testimony. Yahweh says, I hold the scepter of life. I can command the blessing. I will command the blessing. Israel, you got my eye. You want to catch my attention? Do what I say. It's all yours. The kingdom is all yours. Just do what I say.